Madeleine Albright his email address when she came for a visit in the year 2000. But still, even today, I mean, almost certainly only the top leaders in the country are going to have any kind of free internet access. The chief of military intelligence for South Korea, he gave a talk on North Korea, and he said that some of the top grads from the Kim Il-sung Military Academy go into an elite state-sponsored hacker unit. Here's the building through which all traffic in and out of North Korea goes through, so the Korean Computer Center. And some North Korean enterprises, evidently, who need some research and development information, will get information through this enterprise. There's one school in North Korea where you can learn about computers and programming. They take 100 male students a year. They learn English and programming and no games. They do have instant messaging, evidently. They had a Windows operating system, and I want to say the computers were bought in Taiwan, but no internet access at the school. They got one sort of series of official websites that are hosted in Spain. I visited them a couple of days ago, and you'll be glad to know that currently they had a page that said, introducing not one, but two packages for a trip to North Korea. So two different packages are available today. So that kind of comes to a conclusion, the snapshots of the 10 countries we're going to look at. And I'd just like to talk for a few minutes about the future. So my guess is cyber control, especially from the standpoint of the government, will continue to be informed primarily by national security perceptions. And second, market forces. As we saw in Belarus and Zimbabwe, those two things are kind of closely associated with each other, because you need money to pay your troops, and you need troops to wring the money out of your people. Right? And to a certain extent, you might see Big Brother helping Little Brother in terms of quid pro quo relationships, or, I'll vote for your ice skaters at the next Olympics if you vote for my salsa dancers. Did you know that takes place, right? Some of these countries get together and they vote for each other's Olympians. Some objectives from the government side. I think it's realistic to imagine that ordinary users can be blocked from doing blatantly bad things that the government could identify and could stop. The problem is when you have sophisticated users who are willing to take a personal risk. Now, it does come at great personal risk, but when they're clever and they are sophisticated and educated, I think it's relatively unrealistic for governments to think that if you allow any kind of a widespread internet access into your country, that you're going to stay on top of it all. And this is part of the reason for that. Analysts truly are overwhelmed. If any of you play kind of computer network defense roles, you know that actually collecting traffic, databasing it, sorting it, analyzing it, and getting anybody to care about your report is just a staggering task. Website content far too dynamic, and then software and hardware are evolving by the day. How can you possibly keep on top of all this when, somebody in this day and age can essentially, learn Perl or Ruby or whatever it is and create a program that's going to go around your system? Now, some of it is also economics. As a leader of a state, you're sort of constrained. I mean, you can absolutely ruin your country, which kind of is what is going on in Zimbabwe today. But essentially, you have some choices to make. Do you want to let things move forward, or do you want to stay in power at all costs? We all know that monopoly essentially is going to ruin over time, efficiency, progress, vitality, perestroika, the changes that are ongoing in China. All of that, is a testament to the fact that you need some level of competition, some level of objectivity. You need for people to be able to be creative and imaginative when they want to open a business or even just to do research and write a paper. And the internet thrives on this, right? So it was built just for the exchange of information quickly. That's why it was built. And so if one node is cut off, the other nodes can communicate with each other, right? And so, cyberspace, the same thing. If you sort of choke off the life of cyberspace through censorship, you're going to affect the economy in negative ways. The future is ever going to be more wired. An interesting article, if you want to check it out, is Francis Fukuyama about 15 years ago. He wrote an article essentially saying that all of this has already been decided. We know that open information exchange and some level of market activity and representative democracy. All of this is relatively good. It's not perfect, but we know it's pretty good. And slowly but surely over time, since I think 1812, the first big victory of Napoleon, he says that's when history ended. And we're all headed, slowly but surely through sort of fits and starts toward those are some level of freedom of economy and freedom of government. The future of cyber resistance. So I think privacy advocates should be somewhat optimistic. I think the internet, basically more than any technology in history, has done more for human rights and more for the spread of knowledge and understanding. Traditional media are so much easier to control. In the old days, when you had a coup d'etat in sort of third world country, the first thing that happened in the morning, at 5 in the morning, you'd send your troops out, right, if you're a coup d'etat leader, and you would take control of the radio transmitter and the printing press, right? The first thing you wanted for people to see in the morning was the face of the new leader on television. Even if they'd been seeing this other guy for the last 30 years, you wanted them to turn on their TV in the morning and see the new guy. And you wanted them to turn on the radio and hear the new guy's voice, right? In the newspaper, that can wait until the afternoon because that only comes out once a day, and that's pretty slow. But like I said, in this day and age, that doesn't really apply anymore because everybody, if you have an internet connection, essentially you've got a radio transmitter and a printing press in your own room, in your own house, right? So it's much more difficult for governments over the long term to maintain control of this. And it's true for both ordinary people and people who do this for a living. Really common tools, like I said, in Saudi Arabia, people are just saying, screw this, I'm going to connect directly to a foreign ISP, right? I'm going to buy a satellite. Now the whole country's dotted with satellite dishes. And they're just going to connect to some other ISP. They don't want to go through their filter. There's all kinds of means for, email to be anonymous. There's possibility for encryption and proxy traffic, covert channels. I mean, if you get creative, and the more difficult your situation is, you may have to dig deeper into these various tools, but you can say, look, I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to leave the country when I visit CNN on a Tuesday. You can visit CNN every other day but Tuesday, but the day you visit CNN on Tuesday, how are you going to catch that, right, if you're in charge of keeping, watch on your country, right, and following some individual? So covert channels like that are entirely possible. They're entirely impossible to catch if they're done well. But the last thing is creativity. Essentially, you want to keep evolving, right, and you want for the little guy to have some innovation all the time, over time, because the governments, when they find out what you're doing, of course, they're going to be able to catch it. And if you write a tool that secrets information out of a country, about your bad president or something, and if the government finds out exactly what you're doing, they're going to block it, right? So over time, you're going to have to evolve and change your tactics and be creative and imaginative. And so that's the last thing I'll leave you with there. In the news, there's one thing, the siphon that has been from the University of Toronto. It's designed specifically for regimes like what we've talked in this briefing. So, you could go home tonight and download it on your computer, install it, and basically offer connection information to your computer for somebody in one of these countries, right, to connect an encrypted communication through your computer and out to the World Wide Web. It's supposed to work pretty well, and of course the website says it works so well that security really is up to the personal trust between the two parties, and that a monitoring government would have to break that social connection. And of course it couldn't be entirely true because if the government is obviously going to be looking for traces of this, but obviously they're designing it so that those characteristics are hard to look for in traffic. There's no magic bullet, like we said. We don't know the future. Cyberspace is essentially anarchic. I think that's a good thing. There's no perfect defense for governments or people, but also there's no perfect attack. So even if you develop a cool attack, be sure that you can evolve it over time. Advice, is probably increase vigilance during key times like elections, and that's no more clear than in Belarus, right? Whenever you see presidential referendums and elections and there's always crazy things going on the network there. And if you're personally targeted in one of these countries, I would say that really I would look up on the internet if you had never seen this thing called the Moscow Rules. The Moscow rules are way back in the Cold War. They said all of the CIA case officers, when they finish school, you're supposed to know these by heart, right? They're just general rules to live by. But if you're personally targeted, if you figure the government is onto you, you had better not do anything too suspicious. Truth in cyberspace requires a lot, and all of these things are normally only available to governments. I mean, really, you need serious experts in cyber. And if you're determined some kind of a proof that would stand up in court, especially, you need a map of the infrastructure, you need a baseline for the traffic, you need to send traffic along different routes from different places, you need to have all of this cataloged and analyzed, in sort of an evidentiary proof standard, which is, it's not going to be available to the small guys. Let's see, the human factor. This is really, I think, the last slide before we'll see just a last 2-minute clip from 1984. But that's people, and that's the important part of all this, which is, you and me and, the rest of the human race. But it's really the key piece in this. I mean, the internet is just technology, right? It's just a thing, but we want it to be doing good work for us and not bad. Even for the uninitiated who don't study this stuff for a living, I mean, latency, the banners, errors, computer crashing, all of that stuff means something. And if you're awake and you're, and you care about these issues, that, you can associate that with things that are going on in the real world. There's always a connection between what's going on in cyberspace and what's going on in the real world, right? So you just have to make that connection, and then all of a sudden you have some idea what's going on. I would investigate problems quickly. And then one of the really key issues to understand is whether the censorship is general in nature or if it's personally targeting you. And one of the ways to do that is to look at the content and think about, is this content kind of amenable to filtering? Is it, the kinds of stuff that I'm looking for, the kind of stuff I'm including in the body of my email, does anybody know about this? And if I'm not receiving an email that doesn't really look like anybody should know about it, of course, then that may raise some suspicion on your part. Whether it's a legitimate blocking of traffic or a man-in-the-middle attack, it may just be up to you to determine, and you may never have any proof otherwise. So let me show you a final clip here from the movie 1984.
Glorious revolution, I had no faith in our future. I forged government announcements and falsified figures quoted for agricultural and industrial activity. As a result of mental disturbance dating from my experiences during the atomic wars, I was a willing subject of Goldstein's influence. I was stubborn and egocentric. When own-life thoughts occurred to me, I reveled in them. I went into the proletarian zones. I had sex with prostitutes. I deliberately contracted syphilis. It was at this time that I made contact with the resistance. I was personally contacted by the arch-traitor Goldstein and ordered to assassinate certain inner-party officials. This I did. My agents forged documents and gained entry to the Ministry of Truth.
Thought crime is death. Thought crime does not entail death.
I deliberately passed
Thought crime is death.
With the result,
I have committed, even before setting pen to paper, the essential crime that contains all others in itself.
Many hours of my free time encouraging my agents to deface party posters and hoarding announcements. I read and memorized Goldstein's book. For 30 years, I have plotted to bring down the party. I was sick in mind and body. Together with my colleagues, Aronson and Rutherford, I did counterfeit important